But at this point, we're going to do the roll call and then public comment whenever you are ready, Mr. Secretary.
Okay. Yeah, while we're doing that, I could probably I found your email now. Minority Reports, Territory Stand. No, that's not it. Let me just do the roll call and then I'll catch up.
Sure.
Because I have it right here in front of me on my laptop, so I'll just copy
No stress. We all have enough stress, and I'm getting out the holy hand sanitizer.
it. All right, here we go. Matt Choco. Matt Choco, Virginia. Markham is absent. Laura Epke.
Here.
Richard Fast.
Here.
Jim Follner. Helen Gilson. Paul Grindle.
Here.
Duke Van Horn. Thomas Knapp.
Here.
Kat Martin.
Here.
Josh McHose.
Here.
Oh. Randy McGlenn. Al Meckley.
Present.
Bennett Morris.
Here.
Daryl Perry.
Here.
Omar Crow is here. Roger Roots.
Here.
Brian Slawinski.
Here.
Aaron Starr. You say was
Yeah,
absent.
but he'll join in about an hour when he gets off work.
Okay. And Curry Taylor.
Here.
Yes. Okay, so that's 14 primaries, and now let's move to the alternates. Okay. Jeffrey Adams. Jim Cavoli.
Present.
Fred Cole. Spencer Diaz. Tiffany Diaz de Leon. I see Richard Longstreth.
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay. Alicia Matson is here. Betty Rose Ryan. Gus Tatalis. John Watts. Jeff Wood. Not seeing him on the screen. Okay, second alternates. Luke Enzor. Lisa Gaiola. John Faulkner. Matthew Maxner. AJ Olding. Okay, so I show three alternates. Mr. Cavoli, I believe, will be acting in place for Ms. Gilson.
And if the caller on area code 601 could please identify themselves.
Okay, so let me mark this Cavoli. And that's it. So that's quorum would be 16. Wait.
Brian
Mr.
Slawinski is 601.
I'm sorry?
No.
Brian Slawinski is 601.
Okay, so we do have Brian Slawinski. Okay, I'm just going to get your name correct on the. So we do have Brian Slawinski.
Actually, I'm sorry. We have 17 that would qualify for quorum because Mr. Longstretch would act in place of Mr. Van Horn, who is not here.
You mean I get full voting rights this time? Woohoo!
Until Mr. Van Horn shows up.
I'll enjoy it for 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Yes, I show all the other LMT members here: Ms. Epke, Mr. Fast, Madam Chair, and
Okay.
and Mr. Knapp. Yes.
All right, so we have 10 minutes for public comment. If any member of the public would like to speak, just get my attention and I'll call on you in order. We usually, again, have time after the meeting concludes that you can also interact with each other and the platform committee. So if anyone wishes to speak, please let me know.
I would like to speak.
Okay, is that Mr. Jordan?
Yeah, Mister, it's fine.
Okay.
It goes both ways. But yeah, so the reason we're speaking is yesterday, we had, with the assistance of some of your members, we had submitted a platform plank, submission on gender identity. I just wanted to say something about that really quickly. We libertarians, we take great pride in standing at the forefront of social liberty, as we have since our party was founded. And our platform explicitly stands up for the rights of religious, racial, and sexual minorities while remaining almost completely silent on gender minorities. The only place gender is mentioned on our platform is 1.4, which is a plank on personal relationships, which has little to do with gender identities. The plank we proposed both because the LP has an existential mandate to remain ahead of the curve on social liberties, and because it needs to prioritize protecting the rights of gender minorities as much as it prioritizes sexual orientations, races, religions, and cultures. And if you didn't hear it, the language for that really quickly that we had submitted was individuals have the right to determine their own gender identities. Oh wait, sorry, that's the old language. Well, it was submitted. I think somebody
And
else was here with the language.
we did have we did have enough sponsors for that. So that will be going to an email ballot. If you don't have the link to be able to observe the email discussions, it is on lp.org under the subcommittees page. There is the link to the committee discussion so that you can observe.
Okay, yeah, definitely. Thank you.
You're welcome. And I apologize if I mistitled you in any way.
No, that's fine.
Would anyone else like to speak? Oh, I see Mr. Brown.
Yeah, I just wanted to speak to the same plank proposal. My perspective is that of an ally, and when definitions of gender that I had no say in creating were thrust upon me by outside forces, I experienced no dissonance. And as I developed and matured, the gender identities I was given at birth did not contradict with my own individual identity. And many are not so privileged. Right now and for the foreseeable future, the Libertarian Party is an organization made up of allies. And if we're to be an opposition party, standing athwart oppression wherever it exists, working towards a world set free, then we must center those voices, ideas, and individuals most oppressed by the state society. As allies, we must never forget that it is not our voices which need to take center stage. This is a chance for us to signal to a world outside the Libertarian Party that the LP is a group of allies committed to centering the voices of the oppressed. Thank you.
And I also encourage you to follow along on the discussion. And just so that you know, if there's any input when the discussion has taken place, you can email anyone or myself on the email discussion list, and we will pass it along.
Can someone post that in the actual chat for the
Certainly.
that link?
We
Madam
will do
Chair,
that. Yes.
I have a request. If I know we haven't gotten to the agenda yet, but as this did receive the requisite number of sponsors and we are meeting and our agenda is a little bit light, if there is time, I would like to add this to the agenda for tonight and we can resolve it.
That's not possible because of the 10-day notice requirement, which is very strict.
Even with a 2/3 approval of this body?
You can't go beyond the notice, so no. Absolutely,
Okay.
Even with unanimous consent, we could not.
All right, understood. Thank you.
And Mr. Van Horn has arrived.
Ah, okay. The two gentlemen that were speaking, do they wish to say which state they're from?
No, I am from Nevada.
That was Mr. Brown?
No, that was Aubrey and Bo.
Nevada.
Yeah, I'm in Kentucky, but point of inquiry, may I ask who is speaking that wanted to vote on it today?
Mr. Longstreth.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, we have a few more minutes for public comment if anyone else would like to speak.
Okay, Mr. Van Horn showed up.
Goddess Ashley, were you wanting to speak?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yes, so I'm here as well to speak on behalf of this plank. Those of you who know me know that this is something that I am very passionate about, that I have been working towards making the LP a more accepting place for those of different genders and gender identities. This language is extremely important to us in many ways, as they've already brought up. But speaking to it from an individual point of view where this directly affects me, it took me a long time to even come to the Libertarian Party because of preconceived notions. I joined the party about 2 years ago when I asked our current chair, Nick Sarwark, to make a public statement affirming the rights of transgender people, and when he did, I joined the party. Having this as a public tool in our platform not only signals that we care about all oppressed people, but it reaffirms rights that we already have. There's nothing negative in this text, and it's all a reaffirming of current rights, which is so important to reaffirm the rights of those who are oppressed. And to stand up with them and be allies. So I ask anybody who considers themselves an ally for either trans people or GSM people in general to please stand up for this when the time comes, and to please vote in the affirmative to get this an audience, so we as a party can show that we truly do care about all individuals and that all individuals deserve the same protections and rights.
Hey, thank you. And the link to the discussion group has been placed in chat for those who have requested. We have 4 minutes left in public comment if anyone else would like to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Fogelberg?
Yes, hi. I'm here in support of this gender amendment to the platform as well. I'm an ally, and I think everyone said things more eloquently than I could, but I just want to go on the record from the state of New York that I support this 100%.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, seeing no one trying to get, again, okay, thank you, Goddess Ashley.
May I just add one more thing? If any of you have any questions about this, need explanations, if there's anything you don't understand, please reach out. Any of us who created this would be happy to have the conversation with you. We'd be happy to talk to you about what this means and why we chose our particular language and why this is important to not only us, but the party completely. So I just wanted to put that out there.
And if anyone who had commented wished to leave their email address in chat, please feel free to do so if anyone wishes to reach out. Okay, so now we're going to get started with the main agenda, which is the leftover business from last time. The first item being the naming of the new plank on the language on territories, which is up on the screen. It was decided that it would be placed before what is now 3.7, and it will become the new 3.7, and the rest will be renumbered accordingly. But there is no title. Ms. Mattson.
So I believe Aaron had suggested this during the last meeting, and in his absence, I will move it that we title this Territories.
Okay, we do then have a motion. Is there any discussion or debate on the motion, which, let me just restate it, is that the name of this plank would be Territories. And if there, Mr. Fast?
Does this body feel the need to have any discussion about the nature of the word territories and how we feel as I mean, I understand in the common language, you know, we use territories because that's how they're called as libertarians, do we want to revisit that concept when naming this new plank? I'm just throwing that out there to the body.
I would give you my view on that if you will indulge me. That word is already in the plank that was approved. So not so sure how helpful that would be, but anyone can certainly bring it up and it would be germane to the discussion. But considering how the word is already in there, I think that door has already, what's it, the horse is already, you know, the horse is out of the barn. Whatever the metaphor is.
Fair enough. That's fine. I just I didn't know if it was worth reconsidering from a libertarian's perspective, but it's common parlance and it's in the proposed plank. So if it causes more problems than solves, then we can just let this go.
Okay, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So what we will be doing is, this is the title aspect, and we still have yet to, I have to go through the minutes now of what we decided on the last thing. What did we decide to do with the placement of it? Because it was, yeah, we were supposed to put it in between two sections.
It is going to be the new 3.7 with the current 3.7 being moved down. So everything will be renumbered accordingly.
Ah, okay. So now this is the title part.
It's just the title.
Okay. I think I have.
Is there any further debate on Ms. Matson's motion? And I realize I didn't ask for a second. Is there, and I apologize for that. I will.
Information.
One moment, Mr. Secretary, did you second?
Well, I think I'm going to raise the same point of information that someone else was. You said that committees don't require a second.
That's, okay. I'm sorry. You are correct. I've been flying around way too much right now. I barely remember that I'm in Colorado. Thank you for putting me back on track.
You've been washing your hands a lot.
And yeah, I think I'm getting hand sanitizer poisoning. Alrighty, is there any further debate or any debate on Ms. Matson's motion?
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I'm wondering if anybody else has had an opportunity to think of any other names. I wouldn't want to vote on this without having heard any other names, if there are other names to consider. And I'm just wondering if there are any other names to consider.
None have been put forward, and Mr. Starr did announce his intention last meeting that this is what would be proposed. So I would assume everyone has had an opportunity to think of names if they wish to. Okay, I have Mr. Perry, then Mr. McHose, then Mr. Knapp. Mr. Perry?
Question, is the proposal to name this territory singular or territories plural?
It was plural.
Okay, it shows in the notes up on the side as being singular, so I just wanted to make sure on that. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. McHose?
I just had an idea was lawful jurisdictions. I don't know. It was just another idea I could think of that's maybe similarly worded to territories, but more defined.
Are you moving an amendment or just throwing it out there for thought?
Just throwing another thought if anyone thought that was a good idea.
Mr. Knapp?
My hand was down. My same as Daryl's on finding out whether it was plural or singular.
Okay. Well, is there anyone else who wishes to debate, discuss?
Madam Chair?
Mr. Fast?
Yeah, I like the idea of lawful jurisdictions. As a radical, I don't like the concept, but I do think that name is a little bit more appropriate or a little bit more friendly. Naming it territories kind of makes it sound like, you know, the people there are second-class citizens, which is what we were talking about the last call. Lawful jurisdictions It's a little bit more, in my view, a little bit more broad and doesn't really have that condescending connotation that the word territories has. I'm wondering if anybody else feels the same way. That's just my first reaction.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Cavoli and then Ms. Matson.
Respectfully, the comments raised regarding the insinuation of the territory citizens as somewhat second class, I think is something that we have made a rather clear point on, the fact that by default they are right now. Addressing that wrong is part of, I think, the idea behind this platform plank. I would also suggest that should anyone wish to move an amendment to strike territories and replace with language like lawful jurisdictions or whatever, we perhaps not address them as particularly lawful or legal otherwise, extra legal perhaps, or non-state might be worth calling out. As it stands though, unless anyone has anything firm that they'd like to move, I would encourage the body to proceed towards a vote. Should we not choose this name on a simple vote, the floor would be open for further suggestion or move an amendment. That's it.
Okay, Ms. Matson, and then if there's no objection, Mr. Longstreth. Ms. Matson.
So it overlaps somewhat with the previous speaker, but the text of the plank itself calls it territories throughout. So this seems a reasonable title for the existing language. And I would not vote in favor of a title such as lawful territories. Not everyone agrees that they are, that the U.S. should have territories that it possesses. So I don't like that alternate terminology, and we might as well use the verbiage that is in the text of the plank.
Okay, Mr. Longstreth and then Mr. Perry. Mr. Longstreth.
I would echo Ms. Matson's comments there. I think that the word territories, if it is triggering to anybody, good. The United States shouldn't have territories. Let it be a trigger, and then we can remove this plank altogether. But I think calling them what they are and what they're recognized from top down, whether that's United Nations or federal government or wherever you want to start at, that is what it is, and it's in the text of the actual motion. So unless there is a substitute that is more adequate, I mean, this sounds like the best possible option for the name of this. I get that it's triggering, but let's get rid of all of our territories and then it won't be an issue.
Mr. Perry.
I'm going to motion that we name the plank colonialism, which is a throwback to a plank that used to be in the LP platform with similar wording, although much shorter, didn't go as far as what we're doing now, but I definitely think colonialism would be a good name for the plank.
Are you moving to amend?
Either amend or substitute. I'm not sure which is appropriate here.
Well, if it's
Madam Chair, as a point of just inquiry, could we not, if we only have the two suggestions, could we just do it by approval voting and see which one gets the most votes?
That would not typically, we cannot make our own rules of order or otherwise. So I do not think that would be in order.
We're doing a head-to-head vote anyway, so it has the kind of the same effect.
Right, and I'm trying to, it's really up to you, Mr. Perry, whether you're doing it as an amendment or as a substitute. Here's procedurally what the difference would be. If it's an amendment, we would vote whether or not, it's pretty much the same. We would vote with an amendment whether or not to approve your amendment, in which case that would become the primary motion. If it was a substitute, we would be moving whether to make the substitute the main motion. So it is, for all intents and purposes, the same. So I'm going to
amend.
I'm just going to call it an amendment. All right, so now we are on debate on the amendment, which is instead of territories, to call this new plank colonialism. So is there any debate on the amendment?
I'll say a few words about that.
Mr. Roots?
Yeah, I don't think colonialism really describes the language that we're talking about. If we're going to have a plank on colonialism, it should be some position regarding, you know, colonialism, the practice of colonialism. Whereas what we've agreed to is language about these lands, such as Guam and you know, Puerto Rico. You know, what we've adopted is some language addressing the self-determination rights of these people. We haven't really made any statements about colonialism.
Thank you. Ms. Matson?
Time is 7.
Yeah, I think colonialism kind of overstates the reality of what we have with the territories. You know, that's that word implies more government control than what in reality exists with the territories as they are with the United States today. It's more of a, you know, monarchy takes over and then you're under the monarchy kind of setup. And the situation with the U.S. territories is it's not all the way that far. It's somewhere in the middle between a state and colonialism. So I don't think that's an appropriate word.
Madam
Mr.
Chair.
Fast?
Yeah, is speaking in favor of the term colonialism. I guess what I would add is that right now these territories, although they are self-governing to a certain extent, they are not fully autonomous. And what we have right now with these territories is what I would consider a form of neo-colonialism. It may not be the quote-unquote classical colonialism that you would see centuries ago in history textbooks, but the aftermath, the situation is a little bit different, but you know, it is still the remnants of earlier colonialism, and I would deem this neo-colonialism or colonialism, the remnants of it in the 21st century. So I think this title is a little bit more appropriate.
Mr. Knapp?
I'm obviously as concerned as anyone about colonialism, but this is a pretty specific plank about a pretty specific subject, and that subject is territories. So that ought to be the name of the plank.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on the amendment, which is this for colonialism, to be clear? Mr. Perry?
I would like to amend my amendment to have the name be territorial autonomy, which is something that Mikester suggested in the chat, and I think is much more fitting than either territories or colonialism.
Okay. So we are on the second level of amendment. So now debate will be on the potential title of territorial autonomy. Would you like to speak further to that?
No, thank you.
Mr. Knapp?
Madam Chair, point of order.
Mr. Longstrap?
Yeah, I think that changes it's not germane to what the original amendment was. While it is still a name change, it is a completely different name. It doesn't add a word to the original proposal. It's a whole different proposal unto itself. So now we're getting layers deep on multiple different names without resolving one name or the other.
I am going to rule that not well taken, since we are just simply naming something. I do agree that there is a gray area there, but I am going to rule it in order. And Mr. Knapp? Did you still wish to speak, Mr. Knapp?
His chat says his hand is not up.
Oh, okay, thank you. It was at one point. Is there any further debate on territorial autonomy as the title?
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Fast?
I support the name territorial autonomy more so than just territories. So the reason being that territorial autonomy, this name does reflect the language of the proposed plank. Not only that, I think that this name has a more positive element to it than just territories. If it were just called territories, I feel like the approach, just looking from the title, before even going into the language, is we're just kind of dealing with the status quo. Whereas if the title is actually territorial autonomy within the context of the proposed plank, it has a more positive, more freedom-based approach to it that I think is the intent of this proposal. So I would encourage folks to vote in favor of territorial autonomy.
Mr. McCose?
I would like to just echo what Mr. Fast just said. That language, territorial autonomy, is kind of just gives a whole summary of the whole plank for those that really, some people may not understand the language, and it just says, we support territorial autonomy.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on the wording of territorial autonomy? Okay, seeing none, we will proceed to a roll call vote on the amendment, which would make the main motion to be whether to call it territorial autonomy would be the main motion. If this is voted down, we will then be back to colonialism. And whenever you're ready, Mr. Secretary.
Give me 1 second to just
Certainly.
rename this. Okay, that's fine. All right, here we go. Matt Choco. Oh, he's not here.
I am here, but I'll abstain.
Okay. Okay. Laura Epke.
No.
Richard Fass.
Yes.
Jim Fuller's not here. Jim Cavoli.
Pass.
Paul Grindle.
Pass.
Duke Van Horn. Mrs. Van Horn.
Sorry. Pass.
Thomas Knapp.
No.
Cat Martin.
Yes.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Brandon McGlenn.
He's not here.
Oh. Al Meckley.
Yes.
Bennett Morris.
No.
Daryl Perry.
Yes.
Omar Curl votes. Will abstain. Roger Roots.
Yes.
Brian Selinsky.
Yes.
Leisha Matson.
I vote no.
Curry Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to the top here. To Mr. Fulner's not here. Jim Cavoli.
Yay.
Paul Grindle.
Yay.
And Mr. Van Horn.
No.
Okay, if my numbers are correct, I show 10-5 to express abstention, Madam Chair.
Yep, that's also what I have. So that is now the main motion is to whether or not to entitle this territorial autonomy. So,
Chair, as a point of order, that was an amendment.
Point of order.
oh, excuse me. You know what? I am having a complete brain fart here.
So that was a vote between colonialism and
Correct.
territorial autonomy.
So now we're voting between territorial autonomy and territories, which
Yes.
will be the main motion. Thank you. I knew I was getting something crazy here. All righty. Is there any further debate needed on this? Seeing none, whenever you're
Madam
ready, Mr. Fast.
Yes, thank you. Once again, I'd like to reiterate that I think it's very important that we retain the word autonomy in the title of this proposed plank. I think that the word autonomy is going to resonate with a lot of libertarians. I think they would be very receptive to that at the convention. And also, I think it gives newcomers who are reading our platform for the first time, if this does get adopted, I think that they will be very receptive to the idea of having autonomy in the names of our planks, even if they don't actually read the planks themselves, and if they're just kind of gazing at the titles of these planks, that gives them a very clear idea of where we're coming from, even if they don't read all the fine print. So I think it's very important to maintain the word autonomy.
Thank you. We have Mr. Knapp and then Ms. Mattson.
The plank specifically includes options for non-autonomy on the part of the territories, such as statehood. So making the plank name territorial autonomy would be false advertising.
Ms. Mattson?
Yeah, that's pretty much what I was going to say. It gives them options for statehood, which is not autonomy, or maintaining a current status, which is not autonomy. So 2 of the 3 options listed are not autonomy.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Fast?
Hearing what the previous speakers have said, yes, that is true. However, if I recall correctly, that just refers to one sentence in this proposed plank. So yes, while that is true, I think it is still important to maintain in the title a sense of direction, of options, of what to happen with these territories. I think just to leave territories by itself would be a mistake. I think it would give the wrong impression just from the surface that we are starting from the status quo. And I think that that's kind of a bad look for this plank. I think that we should at least show that we're not just only talking about territories from the status quo, but also from a range of options. Autonomy, yes, is one of them. And I think we should focus on that option side. As libertarians, we value that very highly.
Thank you. I have myself for a brief comment, then Mr. McCose and Mr. Cavoli. I would like to cite Rush here and say if you choose not to decide, you still have made a choice. Autonomy means you get to choose. You can choose to be non-autonomous. So not stating a preference for one wording or the other, personally, I think it's somewhat of a straw man argument against the word autonomy, but that's just my personal opinion. Mr. McCose?
I would like to also echo what Ms. Harlos just said, that yes, the whole plank is on the status of their autonomy and whether or not they have autonomy or not.
Okay, Mr. Cavoli?
Well, I'll be brief. Thank you, Madam Chair. You took the words right out of my mouth. So
Rush? Were you going to quote Rush?
I will keep it nice and short now. Yes, I think, as has been pointed out by the chair and members, that the matter of the use of the word autonomy here is perhaps a matter of perspective and context from which one is approaching that. I don't think it is a strictly inappropriate thing. I think a lot of the other benefits that have been cited around the fast reading interpretations stand, and I do reject the notion that should someone choose something different, that they have failed to have autonomy simply for the fact that they have made that choice. And we ought to support the choice.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further debate? And I do want to thank Ms. Mattson and Mr. Longstreth for knocking some sense into me. I don't even know what I was thinking at that moment. Ms. Mattson?
I just want to refer to the definition that Thomas Knapp just posted in the chat room, that which is how most people think of the word autonomy. It's the right or condition of self-government, a self-governing country or region freedom from external control or influence, independence. That is what most people think of when they think of the word autonomy, and I think it's incorrect to apply that to this plank.
Okay, Mr. Cavoli.
On the note of definitions, I might also suggest that perhaps the choice of adding the word autonomy here in a way helps direct the delegates towards a question which this committee was unable to come to a different answer on, as I recall from debate in changing language regarding the choices there or what have you. I think it is wholly possible, likely even, that regardless of the way we bring this proposal forward, that the delegates will try to amend it in some form or fashion before adopting it. And perhaps territorial autonomy also charts them the most appropriate course by intent.
Okay, is there...
I like the word autonomy, and I think it's a libertarian type of a word, and I support this motion.
Thank you. Is there any further debate?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Fast?
I support, again, retaining autonomy. I think it is appropriate because it speaks on the matter of being able to choose. I understand the concerns that autonomy might be viewed to think only as independent or self-governing. I understand that concern. However, I think that in this context, the word autonomy actually is appropriate because it involves the ability to choose. Now, whether that is statehood, whether that is complete independence, or maintaining the status quo, regardless of whatever decision a territory may choose for its own course of action, here it is appropriate because it is the ability to choose no matter what choice is chosen.
Thank you. Is there any further debate?
Yes, this is Elmore.
Yes, Mr. Secretary?
So, Madam Chair, we are voting on now the colonialism amendment, correct?
No, what we are voting, we have now put aside colonialism in favor of the wording of territorial autonomy. So we will be voting on whether territories will be the main motion or whether territorial autonomy will be the main motion. Is there any further debate? Seeing none, when you're ready, Mr. Secretary, again to clarify for everyone, a yes vote will make the title suggestion of territorial autonomy the main motion. A no vote is to make just the word territories as the title for the main motion.
Ready when you are.
Oh, whenever you are, go ahead.
Okay. Matt Choco.
No.
Laura Effie.
No.
Richard Fass.
Yes.
Jim Cavoli.
Aye.
Paul Grindle.
Aye.
Duke Van Horn.
No.
Thomas Knapp.
No.
Cab Martin.
No.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Randy McGlynn. Not here, right?
Right.
Al Meckley.
Yes.
Bennett Morse.
No.
Daryl Perry.
Yes.
Omar Recruero will vote nay. Roger Roots.
Yes.
Brian Slawinski.
Yes.
Alicia Matson.
No.
Curry Taylor.
Yes.
Okay. There was no one that was passed. I show here 9-8, Madam Chair, in favor.
Okay, so that passes, and that now is the main motion. So the motion now on the table is to title the plank Territorial Autonomy. Is there any further debate? Ms. Martin, Mr. McHose had his hand up briefly, but put it down. So Ms. Martin.
Okay, I'd like to propose an amendment.
Okay.
I'd like to make it territorial determination.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to speak to that?
No.
Okay, thank you. All right, debate is now on Ms. Martin's amendment to choose the words territorial determination in place of territorial autonomy. Please let me know if you would like to speak or debate on that, please.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Fast, then Ms. Mattson, and then Mr. Knapp.
Okay, I prefer the word autonomy over determination. The reason being that autonomy is a stronger word, and I feel that when people, again, newcomers, should this be adopted, if they're looking at our platform and they're just looking at the titles, not necessarily reading the fine print in between, I think this stronger word autonomy is going to grab interest. Determination, while that word is also appealing to libertarians and might pique curiosity to outsiders as well, I feel like the word autonomy is a stronger word, and I feel like that's going to reel people in and actually get them to read the plank. And I think that, if we ever have a choice, we should go for the stronger language, and I think autonomy really does that in this case.
Okay, Ms. Mattson, and then Mr. Knapp, and Ms. Mattson.
Well, I guess I don't understand the argument that it's just a stronger word if it doesn't actually describe what the plank is talking about. So we could put a strong word of, I don't know, murder. That's a strong word, but it's not what the plank is about. So I do think that territorial determination is a more accurate description of the text, so I will support that over autonomy.
Thank you. Mr. Knapp?
Yeah, I don't know. Self-determination sounds better than determination to me, but determination is more accurate than autonomy, which is simply false as regards the content of the plank. So I would favor the amendment.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on the amendment? Seeing none, Mr. Secretary, when you're ready for a roll call vote on the amendment, and to restate it, it is to make the main motion territorial determination. A yes vote would do that. A no vote would go back to voting on territorial autonomy, and then it would go back to territories. Am I correct, or did I lose something?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Fast.
I don't think it goes back to territories.
That you're correct.
My,
I was just looking at my vote totals. This is a First Amendment, not a Second Amendment. So what we are here between is a yes vote would make it territorial determination as the main motion. A no vote would leave territorial autonomy as the main motion. Thank you.
Okay. Matt Choco.
Abstain.
Okay. Laura Epke.
Yes.
Richard Fast.
no.
Jim Fona. Nope. Jim Cavoli.
Nay.
Paul Grindle.
Pass.
Duke Van Horn.
No.
Tom Snap.
Yes.
Cat Martin.
Yes.
Josh McHose.
No.
Randy McGlynn. Not here, right? Al Meckley.
No.
Bennett Morse.
Yes.
Dale Perry.
Pass.
Omar Crow will vote aye. Roger Roots.
Nay.
Brian Slawinski.
No.
Alicia Matson?
Yes.
I accidentally said no. I got switched around sometimes. I actually meant yes when I voted. This is Duke Van Horn. I apologize.
That was
Mr. Van Horn.
Duke Van Horn. I accidentally said no. I meant yes. I get mixed around sometimes. I do apologize for that.
okay.
It's in the air today.
Yeah. All right. I was at Miss Matson, who voted aye, correct?
That's correct.
Curry Taylor?
No.
Okay. We are tied, and we have to go back here to Mr. Grindle, Paul Grindle.
So an I vote makes it territorial autonomy and a no vote makes it territories?
We're talking
Not
about,
necessarily.
we still have a main motion to vote on. This is determining the main motion. A yes vote would make territorial determination the main motion. A no vote would make territorial autonomy the main motion.
A no vote would make territorial autonomy the main motion. Then I'm voting nay.
Okay, Mr. Perry.
I will abstain.
Okay. So let me just double check here. I got thrown around here. Mr. McGlynn is not here. Follner's not here. All right. If my numbers are correct, Madam Chair, I show 7 yay, 8 nay. 2 express abstentions.
Give me one moment. Self-determined. I am, because I have a choice here.
Yes, you do.
So it's 7 yes and 8 no's.
Yes.
I am going to vote yes to cause a tie and cause it to fail. So the main motion now is territorial autonomy. Is there any further debate or amendments?
Give me a second to change the screen
Sure,
here.
I'm just, and I see Mr. Cavoli.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It took me a moment to relocate the Zoom window. There are a few synonyms we can use here that really work out well, as debate has shown. Perhaps the only word left in the middle to even discuss would be the word sovereignty in place of autonomy, simply because that would then leave it within very much the optional constructs of state-like autonomy, a sovereignty. It doesn't really cover the current state of territories, which are not really recognized to have a sovereign government in current law, but would cover the other 2 cases. I'm not fully prepared to move it unless this discussion particularly gins up that desire within someone. But I think we're running out of synonyms.
Ms. Matson?
I'll move it if Mr. Cavoli doesn't wish to.
So you're moving to amend to make it
Sovereignty.
Territorial sovereignty?
Yeah.
Okay, one moment, please, because I do want to give a point of information here for everyone. And the plank that we decided not to put it into was called self-determination. Just wanted to give that information. So now we are on the amendment of Ms. Matson's amendment for territorial sovereignty. Is there any further debate or discussion? Mr. Knapp.
Once again, there's nothing in the plank about sovereignty. Is there any chance we could name this plank, give it a title that relates to what it actually says, instead of just coming up with words that sound good?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Fast, I had Mr. Cavoli ahead of you, so Mr. Cavoli and then Mr. Fast.
I would note that while the word sovereignty does not directly itself appear in the text of the plank, the matter of sovereignty is itself in at least the confines of the legal system established and under which we are bothering to address territories in the first place, the singular defining characteristic that is denied them that makes them unique. Other bodies or other governments, other systems of government recognized and represented in the United States federal system. They're addressed as having an organized government, not a sovereign one, and it is frankly the more direct point of why they are not states. This is not really lost on the legal points underpinning the debates that have gone on in the courts about this same thing. I think it is certainly at least a little bit less of a walk away than some of the other things we've discussed this evening. And quite simply, whether it is autonomy or sovereignty, I would lean a bit towards sovereignty here. I think the spirit and the point there is to extend beyond the specific text to make note of the largely minority-supported themes that this plank does speak to, if indirectly.
Okay, I had Mr. Fast and then Mr. Knapp.
Okay, so 2 points. The first was I was wondering if somebody more quick than I am had a definition of sovereignty to read to the body just as a point of information. That was my first point. And then my second point was that I recognize that the word sovereignty, at least my interpretation of that word, does describe a more self-deciding situation than the status quo, and that's of course preferable. However, at the same time, I'm still preferential to the word autonomy, simply because it is a stronger word, and it also conveys an ability to choose. Sovereignty, while it may also do the same thing, I see that as an improvement, but not as a more ideal place of choosing one status.
Okay, for everyone's information, the definition of sovereignty is in chat, and it seems to me that it is pretty much a precise synonym for autonomy, but others may.
Could you read it for those of us on the phone?
Certainly. Sovereignty, supreme power or authority, with an example of how can we hope to wrest sovereignty away from the oligarchy and back to the people. A continued definition. The authority of a state to govern itself or another state, national sovereignty. Third definition, a self-governing state.
Madam Chair?
Mr. Fast?
Based upon the definition that you've just read, it's my interpretation of that is that the word sovereignty seems to apply more to a political status, whereas the word autonomy, I think that would apply more to individuals. So I think it really depends on how far along this continuum folks want to go with this. I think that the word autonomy is more consistent with individual freedom, and I think that the word sovereignty has more to do with political status. As the party of principle, I think that it would be more consistent of us to stick with the word autonomy as it applies to individuals, rather than the word sovereignty, which I think is just arbitrary political status.
I would note for Mr. Fast that the language does not mention individuals in the plank. If that influences you in any way, it mentions the territories as a group. Just a point, not trying to argue, just in case that helps you, since you can't see it on the screen.
No, my point stays the same. I think that, if we're arguing, if we want to be the party of principle and consistency matters, I think that the word autonomy is more principled and consistent than sovereignty.
Okay, thank you. Is there any further debate? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Secretary, when you get a chance, and for everyone, what we are voting on now A yes vote would make territorial sovereignty the main motion. A no vote would make territorial autonomy the main motion.
Matt Choco.
No.
Up to my screen here. Here we go. Laura Epke.
Yes.
Richard Fass.
No.
Jim Fulner, not here. Jim Cavoli.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes. Yay.
Paul Grindle. Paul Grindle. Duke Van Horn.
Aye.
Thomas Knapp.
Abstain.
Cat Martin.
Abstain.
Josh McHose.
Pass.
Randy McGlenn.
He's not here.
Right. Al Meckley.
No.
Bennett Morris.
He had to leave.
I was going to ask about that. I want to note that 809. Daryl Perry.
No.
Omar Recruero. I'll vote aye. Roger Roots.
Nay.
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 Brian Slawinski.
No.
Alicia Matson.
I'll vote yes for the slightly less bad option.
Curry Taylor.
No.
Okay. Let's go back here to Paul Grindle. Still not hearing anything from Mr. Grindle. Josh McHose.
No.
Okay. As I have it here, if my numbers are correct, I show 5 aye, 8 nay, 2 express abstentions.
Okay, so that fails. We are back then to the main motion of titling it Territorial Autonomy. Is there any further debate or amendment?
Point of information.
Yes, Ms. Martin.
So, when this goes to vote, a no means that we're back to no name whatsoever. A yes vote means territorial autonomy, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So is there any further debate? And just one further point for Ms. Martin, it would be in order if someone on the winning side of the vote to not, we could go back to territories. There is a way to do it if that ended up with nothing. Just saying, or any of the other ones, as a matter of fact. But it would, at that point, procedurally leave us with nothing.
Okay, thank you for the.
Okay, thank you. Whenever you're ready, Mr. Secretary.
Yep. Just let me move the screen over and okay. All right. Matt Choco.
I'll pass.
Laura Epke.
No.
Richard Fass.
Yes.
Jim Cavoli.
Yay.
Paul Grindle. We seem to have lost Mr. Grindle. Duke Van Horn.
No.
Tom Snap.
No.
Cap Martin.
No.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Al Meckley,
Yes.
Bennett Morris, we lost. All right. Daryl Perry,
Yes.
Omar Recurl votes nay. Roger Roots,
Yes.
Brian Slinsky,
Yes.
Alicia Matson,
No.
Curry Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, if my math is correct. Oh, well, Matt Choco.
No.
Okay. Madam Chair, I show 8 in favor, 7 opposed.
Okay, I'm not going to cause a tie, so that passes.
I don't think that would be a tie.
He had
If it's
said
8-6.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 in favor. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 opposed. If I had voted no, it would cause a tie.
Oh, sorry.
And
Thank you.
I'm choosing not to vote at all. All right, so we have a title of territorial autonomy. We are now moving on in our agenda. If you would like to move that up on the screen, Mr. Secretary.
Yes, give me one moment just to put this title on here. Okay, and now we're moving on to this here, and then let me move the live edit down. 1 second. Right here.
Okay, this had come up during the email discussions. And what we have here is a primary motion and a substitute. The primary motion is to add the following sentence to the end of 4.0 omissions. In every matter, we adhere to the consistent application of the principle of the non-initiation of physical force or fraud. The substitute motion would be instead to add to the end, in order to achieve our goal of a world set free in our lifetime, we support reducing the size, scope, and power of government at all levels and on all issues, and oppose increasing the size, scope, or power of government at any level or for any purpose. Now, let me explain procedurally how it works with a substitute. Both of these motions exist independently and can be amended independently. When there is no further amendments or debate on either of the two motions independently, the first vote will be whether or not the substitute motion as amended, if it is, will become the main motion. And if so, then we would vote on that as the main motion, and a no vote would make the original motion the primary, as it were, the main motion. So during
point of information.
Yes, Ms. Martin.
So is the substitute kind of like an amendment vote? Is that my understanding of this? We vote on the substitute first and then we vote on the original?
No, this is kind of a different procedure, but once you get used to it, it is very useful. Think of these as two totally independent proposals.
Okay.
You can debate on either one of them. You can amend either one of them. Though if they are amended, you can only debate on the amendment that's in focus at the time.
Okay, are they running simultaneously right now?
Exactly. And
Okay.
then when there's no more debate or amendment, the first vote will be whether or not to make the substitute motion as amended the primary motion. If that fails, then the primary motion, the original primary motion as amended, is the main motion.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Who was speaking, please?
Richard Fast.
Yes, Mr. Fast.
I would like to move to adopt the substitute motion as is.
You are calling a question, and that is not appropriate in committees.
Could you tell me how to do this then?
You can't. You have to wait till debate is over and vote how you want.
Okay, at this time, would it be appropriate for me to speak in favor of the substitute motion?
Oh, certainly. And then I have Mr. Taylor, and I will place myself in line as well after Mr. Taylor.
Okay, may I proceed?
Yes, ma'am. I mean, sir. God.
Okay, so I prefer the substitute motion over the main motion, and the reason why is that the substitute motion is more specific. You know, the non-aggression principle, as libertarians, we all adhere to that. However, as any libertarian knows who has gotten into debates about the non-aggression principle, this is a very broad term, and it is open to interpretation, and that often leads a lot of confusion about, you know, what is aggression and what is not. And so the reason why I prefer the substitute motion is because the substitute motion is very clear. It has language that is very specific, and I feel that that is much stronger and more to the point than the main motion. So I would ask this body to vote in favor of the substitute motion.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, and then will be myself, and then Mr. Secretary. Mr. Taylor?
Yes, I actually I'm more approving of the first primary than the substitute. I think the second substitute has a few problems if it's applied iteratively over and over again on a certain issue. It might have Dallas Accord problems. I mentioned this on the mailing list. But right now, besides that, I'd also like to make a motion to amend the first.
Okay.
The first proposal, mainly, I think the wording can be a little bit better with the adhere to. I'd like to propose that we amend adhere to, change that to the word demand. And the reason is because the way it's worded right now, the people doing the consistent application are not necessarily us. We're asking the government to consistently apply the non-aggression principle, not us, because we already do. So it's a matter of who is the object of the person that you're trying to speak about in the sentence, and I think the word demand does that better. Thank you.
Okay. And I am up, and then Mr. Secretary. I am going to speak both against the substitute and against the amendment to the primary. First, against the substitute. The substitute motion, as I stated also in the email group, I think violates the NAP. I would think it would cause a judicial, well, we don't, let's say we have a perfectly functioning judicial committee. I think it would trigger a judicial committee appeal. The reason being, do we really support reducing the size, scope, and power of government, make it governance? I'm not getting into, because me as an anarchist, I'm not against government, I'm against the state. And I do not even believe in reducing the power of governance, government at all levels. That means no laws against murder or rape. So I think this thing in itself contradicts the rest of our platform in its entirety and actually violates our platform. So I speak very strongly against that language. Now, on the amendment, I would just respectfully suggest on the amended language where we said we demand to look at the context of the rest of the omissions plank, which talks about us, which talks about our positions, not what we want not other people. So it's talking about our silence on this, that, or the other thing. And then what it does is give guidance as to where we're silent for how people can get a good guess of what our position would be. It's an inappropriate place for a demand. So I would vote against that and go back to adhere to or something similar. So who I had on deck now.
Madam Chair, could I be added to the queue?
Yes, sir. So I had Mr. Secretary, Ms. Matson, Mr. Cavoli, Mr. Fast, Mr. Knapp.
I would like to be added to it.
Who was that, please?
Roger Roots.
Roger Roots. Mr. Taylor, are you meaning to put down your hands? Thank you. Okay, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am a little conflicted. I will say, however, your comments gave me a little bit of clarity. I keep forgetting to, I've been meaning to post up the wording of the Dallas Accord onto the list, just for those who aren't familiar with what it says or familiar with the Accord, because it happened many years ago. I am, however, pleased. I'm very pleased that we do make mention of it. That speaks to the character of a lot of the members of this committee. It's very important that we recognize that agreement, so to speak, a voluntary agreement from a long time ago. As far as both of these go, before we started the meeting, I had really liked both of them. I like to talk to people and tell people that our goal is a world set free in our lifetime. I really love that wording. But then the rest of it, when you describe it being a NAP violation, that kind of is making me thinking a little bit now. I was really wondering if there was a way that we can combine some aspect of the two of them. So I'm still kind of not sure which way I want to go in this. And I agree, I guess philosophically, we're all anarchists. And philosophically, I'm opposed to force as well. I'm really, that's what really gets my that's what really gets me going is force and that the state uses for every stupid little thing. So maybe I think we're always going to have some form of government or some form of people that get together to make decisions based for others, whether hopefully it's voluntarily, obviously, but I feel the same way you do. I'm opposed to the state. Philosophically speaking, obviously in the real world, it exists and we should try to limit it as much as possible. So at the moment, I'm just still would like to hear more. I guess I'd like to hear more on how everybody feels about this to determine. And I really have no feeling whatsoever on the adhere versus demand. I'm kind of in between on that as well. But I appreciate the viewpoints that people have shown so far. I yield.
Thank you. I have Ms. Matson, Mr. Cavoli, Mr. Fast, Mr. Knapp, Mr. Roots, and Mr. Perry. Ms. Matson.
Okay, so we have an amendment to change adhere to demand. I'm going to offer us a secondary amendment on that portion to use the word advocate instead. And my rationale is adhere to is about how we act, how we choose to live our own lives. Demand is this foot stomping word that sounds like we're going to be screaming on the street corner at people. And advocate, I think, is a more appropriate word. So my motion is the alternative word advocate.
Okay,
advocate.
Thank you.
Sorry, advocate.
Okay, who I have on deck now is
Point of
Mr.
clarification.
Is this privileged, Mr. Perry?
I want to make sure that the wording that is being put forward here is going to be the correct verbiage. And I wanted to make sure that Ms. Matson intended to change the 2 to 4 so that it would say in every matter we advocate for the consistent application, because advocate 2 makes
right.
absolutely no grammatical sense.
Yeah, thank you for that. And actually, I guess my preference would be we advocate the consistent application. So I guess mine is to also take out 2.
And that's the way I had understood Ms. Matson, was we advocate the consistent application.
Thank you.
Okay, who I have on deck now is Mr. Cavoli, then Mr. Fast, and Mr. Knapp, Mr. Roots, Mr. Perry, and I added myself at the end. Mr. Cavoli.
Damn it. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. If you would indulge me for just a second, to direct a quick comment at Mr. Secretary. You have the mover in your minutes incorrect at this point. It was not me. I believe it was Mr. Curry.
It was Mr. Curie.
Then to the matter at hand. Frankly, this is a bit of a touchy one for me. 4 right here, omissions, is my favorite plank in this entire platform. I think it's the favorite of a lot of people. A lot of people on this call and represented by those on this committee. It is sweeping, punchy, accurate, and succinct in a way that I seriously doubt my own, and by extension, not to lump you all in with me, this body's ability to improve upon it much, if at all. It as it sits, delivers a very powerful message, and it does so consistently and cleanly and compliantly with the rest of the platform. The mentioning of the NAP and muddies the water a bit. At a minimum, I think it needs to be moved before the language that we have there, because the language we have right now is one of the most powerful conclusions to this document that we can have. And I think that is an excellent thing. It is one of my favorite points, and it's one of my favorite points for recruitment of people to this party. And as far as just to speak briefly, if I may, to the substitute and its amendments, I likewise reject the notion that we cleanly and universally advocate for reducing the size, scope, and power of government at all levels. Frankly, what we advocate, if nothing else, is that we get government down to a level where people can actually determine the size, scope, and power that it should hold, that it can be genuinely accountable to those people, and that the choice to participate or not in it is one's choice. If your HOA wants to run socialized healthcare, more luck to them. But frankly, the flexibility there, the nuance is completely lost, I think, in this language, and addressed in a way that is a bit harsh and a bit in conflict with parts of not only the rest of the platform, but frankly, the ultimate end state that many members imagine for the world. I would generally oppose any changes to this plank unless strongly persuaded otherwise by debate, and I'm certainly not there yet. I'll yield any remaining time.
Mr. Fast?
Okay, so this is in response to Ms. Harlow's comment, and I'm thinking that maybe I understood it, or maybe hopefully I misunderstood, which is that, removing laws against murder, rape, etc., in regards to the substitute motion, I think that her concern is incorrect. That only the state can stop or prevent these horrible things from happening. The idea behind the substitute motion is that should there be no government laws, then human beings would most certainly have private governance addressing such concerns. So this idea that only the state can stop these horrible things, I think that's misguided and incorrect. The second thing is that while the substitute motion goes in the direction of anarchism, it does not call for anarchism outright. And I don't believe that this is a NAP violation or risks a NAP violation. And I think that those who are concerned with principle, we being the party of principle, should stand behind the substitute motion very strongly.
Thank you. And just to recap who I have on deck, Mr. Knapp, Mr. Roots, Mr. Perry, and then myself. So, Mr. Knapp?
Yes, I move to amend the substitute motion by replacing the word government in the blue language with the words the state. So it would read, we support reducing the size, scope, and power of the state at all levels and on all issues, and oppose increasing the size, scope, or power of government of the state at any level or for any purpose. I'd like to speak to that amendment and to both the main motion and the substitute. But first, I would like to address Mr. Fast. I don't believe that the chair was saying what you thought she was saying. She was not saying, oh, we need the state to make laws. She was saying there are other forms of government than the state, and that we're not necessarily against those and want to reduce them all, that there are...
Okay, I think the issue there is nomenclature, because in that case, I think that governance is a better word than government, because I think government refers to the state.
No crosstalk, please. Mr. Knapp, continue.
So as far as my amendment goes, I hope that that would clarify it by replacing the word government with the state. With regard to the main motion, it's a simple fact that at the moment our platform does not in every matter adhere to, advocate, or demand the consistent application of the principle of non-initiation of physical force or fraud. So I would be opposed to the main motion amendment. And finally, I tend to agree with, I believe it was Mr. Cavoli, that the emissions plank is just fine as it is. And that's all I have to say.
Okay, Mr. Roots.
All right, I want to address this this argument about the Dallas Accord. The chair has said more than once that she thinks this kind of language, which merely says what I think we all desire, which is reducing the size, scope, and power of government, somehow violates the Dallas Accord. Now, my understanding of the Dallas Accord is that it was sort of a truce at one of the national conventions in Dallas years ago, in which the anarchists and the minarchists sort of came to a truce and said that they're all going to get along, and they will neither of them will say that they are the only voice of the Libertarian Party. I don't believe that I'm a strong advocate for the substitute, and I should say the unamended substitute. Let me address Mr. Knapp's proposed amendment to that. I actually like the wording, government at all levels, because that includes state, local, county, federal. I like that language. If you say reduce the power of the state, well, that actually adds confusion to a lot of people who don't understand that you're talking about the federal government as well as state governments, etc. And so I like the original substitute language without Mr. Knapp's proposed amendment. Moving on, back to my argument about the Dallas Accord. I believe that the chair, her interpretation actually would violate the Dallas Accord. I don't believe that this substitute as proposed does violate the Dallas Accord, but I believe that the chair's notion would violate the Dallas Accord because it enshrines the minarchist position as the position of the Libertarian Party. When I go about campaigning, which I do a lot, I can tell you this: the greatest problem the Libertarian Party faces is the problem of lack of knowledge about what libertarian means. And frequently I run across working class people who are our natural voters, and they are the voters who are probably the most resistant to government. And they think libertarian means liberal, which they oppose. And then when I tell them we are the party of anti-government, we are the party that opposes the government across every single dimension, the reaction that I get most commonly is they reach out to shake my hand and they say, all right. And it's almost like I've brought to them what they have sought for so long. I really favor the substitute language. And I think Mr. Knapp actually came up with this language in the beginning, that we support reducing the size, scope, and power of government at all levels and on all issues. I don't believe we need government laws against murder. I don't believe we need government laws against rape, because there are many mechanisms that stop people from murdering and raping each other. And we don't need government or the state or governance, however you look at it, to stop us from doing that. By the way, murder statutes really didn't even exist in America until late in the 1800s. When we inherited English common law, there was no statute on the books that outlawed murder in the colony of Connecticut, New York State colony. There were no laws against murder. it was common law, which means it was law that trickled down from the court rulings and juries and judges over time. We do not need statutes that prohibit murder or rape. Thank you.
Madam Chair, maybe. Thank you.
Sure, I have Mr. Perry, then myself, and then Mr. Fast.
So I'm glad Thomas Knapp made the motion to amend that he did, because had he not, I would have made the exact same amendment. So I encourage everybody to vote for the amendment to the substitute, and then vote for the amended substitute to be the main motion, and then vote to adopt that as what we put forward.
Okay, so now I'm up. And, ooh, I've got a lot of feels on this. All right, I do not believe that amending it from government to the state improved it. I, in fact, think it made it worse. And in fact, advocates outright for anarchy. Because the difference ultimately between minarchists and anarchists is a territorial monopolization on rights protection. So minarchists do hold to a state, and they do not believe in reducing the state at completely, you know, at any time at all levels.
They wouldn't have the TV for a while.
They just don't. I do, but they don't. And so I think that is definitely then a Dallas Accord violation, and is still a NAP violation. As to the Dallas Accord, this is a subject that I am somewhat Rain Man on. Mr. Roots, I believe, has fundamentally misunderstood it. If you want to see the Dallas Accord, look at the changes between the 1972 Statement of Principles and the 1974 Statement of Principles. The Dallas Accord is the 1974 Statement of Principles. That's it. Any informal agreements that were made aren't binding upon us. What is binding upon us is the Statement of Principles. And those were the Dallas Accord changes, which are on the screen in yellow. It's the one subject that I am pretty confident that I know quite a bit, probably too much about, to the point of obsession. Now, to the comment, I don't remember who made it, that our current platform does not adhere to the non-initiation of physical force or fraud in all areas. That is because the preamble states that the policy planks that follow are not our end goal. Our goal is nothing less than a world set free in our lifetime. So we acknowledge right from the beginning that there are non-ideal, directional, transitional items in the platform that might not be our ultimate position. When we're talking about the omissions plank and silence, when it is dealing with our ultimate position, and our ultimate position is in fact, I say NAP, but that really is terrible terminology. It's the non-initiation of force, you know, the NI, whatever. It's just not as sexy as saying NAP, but I think everyone knows what I'm referring to. So I don't think that objection is valid, and I still believe that second substitute has gotten worse instead of better. And as somebody holding to the Dallas Accord, even though it's given me what I want as an anarchist, I will not violate my minarchist compatriots in that way. So next we had up Mr. Fast.
Okay, so I support the original substitute motion, and I oppose the amendment being striking the word government and replacing it with the state. I oppose that amendment because, as I think what Mr. Roots mentioned earlier, this creates confusion. If you say the state, then that some people might interpret that to mean, okay, well, you don't support reducing the size, scope, and power of the federal government, of the county government, of the local school board government, what have you. You only support reducing the state level, but not any other level of government, and that raises a whole bunch of confusion that has been brought up in the past. And so if we were to introduce this new language of the state instead of government as kind of an umbrella term, then I think we're causing more problems than solving them, and it just creates confusion. The other thing I'd like to say is that Ms. Harlos mentioned two definitions of the word government. The first one that she mentioned was a monopoly on the use of rights protection, and that is the minarchist definition. However, while that may be the definition that minarchists use, I don't know of any who use that exact definition. The definition of government that I most hear in libertarian circles, regardless of whether they're anarchists or minarchists, is that government is the monopoly on the use of force in a geographical area. That is the most typical definition, regardless where on the libertarian spectrum you lie. So, in my 10 years in the LP, monopoly of the use of force has been the most used definition. So to now use a different definition kind of skews, the meanings of these words. So I think we should be consistent. So I would ask this body to support the original substitute motion.
I have myself and then Mr. Secretary. Mr. Fast, you have misheard again what I had said. I actually said the territorial monopoly on the use of force. And that is the definition of the state. That is not the definition of government. And never really, people blur the lines, and we're talking about technicalities, but government, you could have multiple governments in one geographic location. A state is a territorial monopoly. There aren't competing agencies. There can be competing governments. So that is the distinction. But I understand the objection that people are making, that the general public does not get this technical. They will see the word state there and think, like when I walk around in Colorado with the state sucks pen, they want to know why I have a problem with Colorado. They don't think the way we do. We're using technical terms, which is fine for political science people and the like, but the general public is not going to understand that. But whether it be state or government, I still think that's, to me, the substitute's a no-fly, in my personal opinion. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just want to say that through the conversation that we're having now, I'm starting to realize why the substitute, amended or unamended, is a problem. Even though philosophically speaking, I personally would like to see the size, shape, scope of the state or government, as you will, reduced, because it's just gotten out of control. But I go back to Mr. Gavoli's statement about how much he appreciates this particular section of the platform. A lot of people do. I do too. And I do really like the wording in the primary, which is in every, we adhere to every application of the consistent application of the principle of the non-initiation of force. I'm leaning more towards that way. I'm not sure about the amendments. I'm not sure how we're going to vote on this, but it seems like the substitute is a problem. It will cause problems at convention if we were to propose this in any way, shape, or form. So I think I would rather myself work with the primary to make it a little bit better. I'm not saying it's not good right now. I'm still thinking about how to word everything, but basically I'm leaning towards voting for the primary. I yield.
Mr. Fast.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Fast.
Okay, yeah, so, I disagree with this idea of the substitute motion being problematic. I don't think that that's the case. And the reason why is because both minarchists and anarchists agree in reducing force. The only difference between them, is how far you go. And one of the most common conversations that libertarians have with each other is, well, how much should we limit government? and people will say, well, okay, oftentimes, they will come to the friendly conclusion. I don't know if it's the right word, but they will come to the concept that we're all in the same train going in the same direction, and we all get off at different stops along the way.
Mr. Fast.
Yes.
Mr. Fast, I do have to interrupt you because right now on the substitute, what the debate needs to be on is whether to use the word state or government. I realize it does overlap into the broader idea of the entire statement, but strictly speaking, that is what the debate is on at this point when it comes to the substitute.
Okay, can I address that? Can I address that then?
You certainly can.
Okay, all right, then let me briefly say that I prefer the original language of the word government instead of the amendment of the state. The reason why is because we have seen this in the past where people confuse the state to mean just the state level and not any other level of government. And as Ms. Harless mentioned, these are technical terms. And so, if we want to be clear, I think that the word government is more readily understandable by the greatest number of people instead of the technical term state. So I would really encourage this body to stick with the original language of government and not the state.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, we have a black screen. I don't know if you realize. So I just wanted to give you opportunity.
Yeah, hold on 1 second. I'll get it back up.
Okay, thank you.
All right.
Is there anyone else seeking to be recognized on any of the pending amendments? Is there anyone specifically seeking to be recognized on the pending amendment of striking government and making it state? Okay, seeing none, we're going to move to a vote on that amendment to the substitute. Mr. Secretary, whenever you are ready.
Point of information, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Fast?
So a yes vote would be in favor of striking government and replacing state. A no vote would be to keep the word government instead of state. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. All right. Do you guys see the screen again?
No.
Hold on.
I don't.
I see it.
I see it.
Okay, let me see.
Well,
Let me see what I'm doing wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I got it now.
All right. So, okay. Explain to me. I'm sorry. As I was doing this, I missed what you were saying, Madam Chair, about how we vote.
Okay, what we are voting on right now is on the substitute motion. We have one pending amendment on it, and there's no further debate on that pending amendment. So it is whether or not to strike the word government where it appears and make it the state.
Okay, so the amendment to the substitute motion.
Correct. There's no further debate on that.
Okay. Here we go. All right, Matt Choco.
No.
Okay, nay. Laura Epke.
No.
Richard Fast.
No.
Jim Fulner.
No.
Oh wait, Jim Fulner's here.
Yeah,
Yep.
he came
I'm
in.
here and I voted no.
Oh.
He came late.
Yeah, we've been calling him. I've been saying okay. Jim Cavoli.
Nay.
Hey, Paul Grindle. We may have lost him. Yeah. Duke Van Horn.
No.
Thomas Knapp.
Aye.
Cat Martin.
No.
Josh McHose.
No.
Al Meckley,
No.
Bennett Morris. Oh, he left, right? Lost. Daryl Perry,
Aye.
Omar Crow votes nay. Roger Roots,
Nay.
Brian Slawinski,
No.
Alicia Matson,
No.
Curry Taylor,
Abstain.
Okay. If my numbers are correct, I show 213 with one express abstention.
Okay, so the wording of the substitute remains the same. I would like to know if there is any, if there's any further debate on the pending amendments to the primary. Where we are at right now is Ms. Matson's motion for, she's advocate the, so if you get that up on there, okay, where instead of, we had demand was a first level of amendment, and she was saying it should be advocate the consistent application of the principle of the non-initiation of physical force or fraud. A yes vote would make that the primary amendment. A no vote would keep demand as the primary amendment. Mr. Perry.
Would it be in order to make a motion to amend this language before we vote?
No, we are on a second level of amendment right now.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, point of clarification.
Mr. Starr or Mr. Fast?
Fast.
Yes?
Yeah, so just to clarify, a yes vote would be in favor of the word advocate, and a no vote would be in favor of the word demand?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Is there any further debate on that?
Madam Chair, this is Curry.
Yes, Mr. Taylor.
Just want to make it clear that the word should be advocate for with the the for.
No, she said in every matter we advocate the consistent application.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We'd clarified that with Ms. Matson earlier. Okay, is there any further debate? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Secretary, when you are ready.
Yes. Matt Choco.
Aye.
Laura Epke.
Aye.
Richard Fass.
Nay.
Jim Fulner.
No.
Jim Cavoli.
Aye.
Duke Van Horn.
Aye. Sorry, aye.
Thomas Knapp.
Abstain.
Cat Martin.
Yes.
Josh McHose.
Aye.
Al Meckley.
Aye.
Yes.
Bennett Morris. No. Daryl Perry.
Pass.
Omar Crow votes aye. Roger Roots.
Nay.
Brian Slawinski.
Aye.
Alicia Matson.
Aye.
Curry Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, we have to go back to somebody.
Mr. Perry.
Mr. Perry?
I'll abstain.
Okay. Madam Chair, I show 11 in favor, 3 opposed, 2 express abstentions.
Okay, so advocate is now the primary amendment. And the original language that this is seeking to amend is adhere to. Is there any further debate on that? I would like to make one comment in debate is I am the author of adhere to, and I like Ms. Matson's language better. Is there any further debate?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Fast?
Okay, so to clarify here, a yes vote would be for advocate and a no vote would be for adhere.
Well, I haven't put the question yet. We're still on debate. So we're debating between either what should be the primary motion, whether it should be adhere to or advocate. I'll explain the implications of the vote when I put the question.
Okay, Madam Chair, a follow-up question.
Yes.
Okay, so as I take it you're the writer of this proposal. My question is, there was some talk earlier about the word that we use, the verb, depends upon who we're speaking to and who we want this to apply to, whether it is the public at large or whether it's government. So my question to you, the writer, is what was your intent? Who were you speaking to? Who was this supposed to apply to?
It was supposed to talk about how to figure out what our positions are, because it's dealing for when we're silent. And it says, first of all, it doesn't mean we approve. It doesn't mean we disapprove. But then, okay, so what do you do? Well, this is our overarching interpretive scheme, and you can arrive at a general idea of what our position would be. I think either term accomplishes that, but Ms. Matson's, in my opinion, is superior.
Oh, okay, so is this a conversation that libertarians are having amongst themselves about what they think is best in any given situation? I'm a little confused here.
I really can't explain it any differently. This is our statement about when we're silent. This is our platform, so it's outward facing, but talking about us.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any further debate? We are at 7, but if there's no further debate, I'm going to move to a vote on this, at which point we will adjourn. If there is, one moment, if there is further debate, we'll take that at the next meeting. Mr. Starr.
I just wanted to say that I'm present, but since Alicia Matson's been here all along, she can vote on this next matter if she wishes to.
Thank you. Is there any further debate, or can we proceed to a vote? Mr. Secretary, whenever
clarification.
Mr. Fast.
Yeah, okay, so what we're about to vote on now, this is only on the proposed amendment. This is not about adoption. This is only about the proposed amendment. Okay.
Correct. I was going to put the question at this point. So,
Madam Chair, point of order, I believe.
Yes.
If Mr. Starr, who is the primary for California, is present, wouldn't he be the one that votes instead of the alternate?
He would, but I assume he will not answer when his name is called, and Ms. Matson will then vote.
Is he allowed to just do that and say I'm present, but then not answer when his name is called?
We're not at his house. I'm not going to get into that, Mr. Perry.
What would happen if this were an LNC meeting and an LNC member were there? He would have to step out of the room. He would have to step out of the room.
To save time, I'll vote on this if it just gets us to move forward.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Starr. So this is what the question is, whether we are going to have as the primary motion, whether it will say adhere to or whether it will say advocate. A yes vote would make the language advocate. A no vote would return it to the original language of adhere to. Mr. Secretary, whenever you are ready.
There's some background noise, Madam Chair.
Would everyone please mute if you're not speaking?
There we go. Okay, so Matt Choco,
Pass.
Laura Ebke,
Yes.
Richard Fast,
Pass.
Jim Fulner,
No.
Jim Cavoli,
Aye.
Paul Grindle, nope. Duke Van Horn,
Yes.
Thomas Knapp,
Abstain.
Cat Martin,
Yes.
Josh McHose,
Aye.
Randy McLean, no. Al Meckley,
Yes.
Bennett Morse,
He left.
right. Daryl Perry,
Abstain.
Omar Crow will vote aye. Roger Roots,
Nay.
that was a yay.
That was a nay. No.
Nay. Brian Slawinski,
Aye.
Aaron Starr,
Yes.
Curry Taylor.
Yes.
Okay, now to the pass. Matt Choco,
I'll abstain.
Richard Fast,
Abstain.
I think that's everybody.
I believe it is. And what I show is 10 yes, 2 no for abstention.
Yes, that's what I have, Madam Chair.
Okay, so now the prime.
Request for information.
Yes, Mr. Starr.
Since we are at the orders of the day right now,
Yes, sir.
which is that the meeting ends, at the next meeting, do we bring it up from here where we could further amend? And then,
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I would like to call for orders of the day, please.
Yes. Okay, the orders of the day at this point are to adjourn. So we will be adjourned at 7:05. I thank you, everyone. And I will post a summary of where we're at in the group in case anyone is confused where we might be. I am leaving, but I'm going to leave this room open and stop the recording if anyone would like to have discussions with committee members that are remaining with the public, you know, and I'll come back later and close it. So let me stop the recording, but you guys feel free to speak amongst yourselves, and thank you very much, and thank you for your patience with my strange, you know, not knowing what was going on earlier. That's completely unlike me. Thank you very much. Have a great night.